My husband spent 4 months secretly recording our conversations and creating fake evidence to try to prove I hurt his brother in a car accident, even though the police already ruled it was an accident. My husband Cooper, 35M, stood in our kitchen 3 days ago and told me I murdered his brother. He said it like he was commenting on the weather. I'm Sadie, 32F, and we've been married for 2 years, together for 5. I knew Cooper since we were kids in the same small town. Everyone always said we'd end up together eventually. His brother Josiah, 31M, died 4 months ago in a car accident. Single vehicle crash on a rainy night coming home from work. The police said he probably fell asleep at the wheel. No alcohol, no drugs, just exhaustion. Josiah worked double shifts at the factory to save money for a house he wanted to buy. I was probably the last person to see Josiah alive that day. I stopped by his apartment around 6 p.m. to drop off some leftovers from dinner the night before. Josiah lived alone and Cooper worried he wasn't eating properly. The visit lasted maybe 5 minutes. Josiah was getting ready for his night shift, still in his work clothes from the day shift. He thanked me for the food and said he'd eat it when he got home in the morning. He looked tired but not unusually so for someone pulling doubles. Josiah crashed around 2 a.m. on Highway 34, about 10 miles from his workplace. His car went off the road and hit a tree. Cooper got the call from the police at 3 a.m. We drove to the hospital but Josiah was already gone. The next few weeks passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and paperwork. Cooper took it hard since he and Josiah were close. They talked every few days and saw each other at least once a week. The questioning started about a week after the funeral. Cooper would ask me to repeat exactly what Josiah said when I dropped off the food. He wanted to know what Josiah was wearing, what room we talked in, whether Josiah seemed upset about anything. At first I thought he was just processing grief in his own way. Some people need to go over details again and again. But Cooper kept pushing for more specific answers. He said I was being inconsistent when I couldn't remember if Josiah was wearing his blue work shirt or his gray one. He accused me of leaving things out when I couldn't recall every single word of our brief conversation. The questions went on for about a week before I told him I was done answering them. Cooper backed off after that and seemed to return to normal grieving behavior. The past few months have been relatively quiet. Cooper went back to work after taking 2 weeks off. We attended a few family gatherings with his parents. His mother Linda, 58F, and father Robert, 61M, live about 20 minutes from us. We usually see them twice a month for dinner or Sunday afternoon visits. They seem to be handling Josiah's death as well as could be expected. 2 weeks ago, the insurance company finished their investigation into Josiah's accident. They concluded it was exactly what the police said, driver fatigue causing a single vehicle accident. Cooper seemed relieved to have official closure. He mentioned that now we could all start moving forward properly. That's why what happened 3 days ago came as such a shock. Cooper, his parents, and I were having dinner at Robert and Linda's house. It was Linda's birthday, and she had made her famous pot roast. We were talking about normal things, Cooper's work, some repairs Robert was doing on their deck, a vacation Linda wanted to take in the fall. The conversation was pleasant and ordinary. Then Cooper set down his fork and looked directly at me. He said he knew I had killed Josiah and he couldn't pretend otherwise anymore. The table went completely silent. Linda dropped her napkin. Robert's mouth fell open. I stared at Cooper, waiting for him to say he was joking or explain what he meant. Instead, Cooper continued talking. He said it was obvious to him that I had been having an affair with Josiah. He claimed I had been going to Josiah's apartment regularly when Cooper was at work. According to Cooper, Josiah was planning to tell him about the affair, so I killed Josiah to keep it secret. He said I probably tampered with Josiah's car to cause the accident. Cooper spoke in a calm, matter-of-fact tone that made his words even more disturbing. He wasn't shouting or crying. He laid out his theory like he was presenting a business proposal. He said he had been watching me for months, looking for signs of guilt. He mentioned that I seemed too eager to help with Josiah's funeral arrangements and that I cried too much at the service. Robert finally spoke up and asked Cooper what evidence he had for these accusations. Cooper said the evidence was in how I behaved around Josiah and how I acted after his death. He claimed I always found excuses to see Josiah alone and that I knew too many details about Josiah's daily routine. He said normal sisters-in-law wouldn't know what time someone left for work or what they usually ate for breakfast. I tried to explain that I knew those things because Cooper talked about Josiah constantly and because I helped look after Josiah when he was working so much. Cooper and I had been bringing Josiah dinner or groceries at least once a week for the past year. Of course I knew his schedule and habits. Cooper shook his head and said I was lying. He claimed I had manipulated everyone into thinking I was just being helpful when really I was carrying on an affair. He said Josiah felt guilty about betraying Cooper and was going to confess everything. According to Cooper, I couldn't let that happen, so I arranged Josiah's accident. Linda asked Cooper how I could have caused a car accident when I was home asleep when it happened. Cooper said I could have done something to Josiah's car earlier in the day or slipped him something to make him drowsy. He pointed out that I was the last person to see Josiah alive, which gave me the perfect opportunity. The accusations went on for almost an hour. Cooper had an answer for every logical question his parents asked. When Robert pointed out that there was no evidence of an affair, Cooper said we had been careful to hide it. When Linda mentioned that the police and insurance company found no signs of tampering with Josiah's car, Cooper said I was clever enough to make it look like an accident. By the end of the dinner, Cooper was talking about going to the police to demand they reopen the investigation. He said he was going to hire a private investigator to gather evidence of my affair with Josiah. He wanted Josiah's phone records examined and his apartment searched for signs that I had been there regularly. Robert and Linda looked stunned throughout Cooper's presentation. They asked a few questions but mostly sat in silence. They didn't defend me directly, but they also didn't agree with Cooper's theory. When we left that night, Linda hugged me goodbye same as always, but she seemed distant. Cooper has been staying at his parents' house since that dinner. He packed a bag the next morning and said he couldn't be in the same house as someone who murdered his brother. He won't answer my calls or respond to my texts. When I tried to go to his parents' house to talk to him, Linda answered the door and said Cooper didn't want to see me. I called Linda yesterday to ask if she believed Cooper's accusations. She said she didn't know what to think anymore. She admitted that Cooper seemed convinced and that his theory explained some things that had bothered her. When I asked what things, Linda mentioned that I had seemed very familiar with Josiah's apartment and that I always knew when he was working late shifts. I tried to explain again that I knew these things because Cooper and I were constantly coordinating our help for Josiah. Cooper would tell me Josiah's schedule so I could plan when to bring food or pick up groceries for him. I had Josiah's spare key because Cooper asked me to check on his apartment when Josiah was working doubles and couldn't water his plants or bring in his mail. Linda listened but didn't seem entirely convinced. She said she needed time to process everything Cooper had told them. She asked me not to contact Cooper for a while and to let the family work through this situation privately. She promised they would reach out when they were ready to talk more. I spent yesterday looking through old text messages and photos on my phone, trying to find evidence that would disprove Cooper's theory. I found dozens of conversations where Cooper asked me to help with something for Josiah, picking up his prescription, dropping off dinner, checking if he needed anything from the store. I have photos from family gatherings where Cooper and Josiah are together, clearly showing their close brotherly relationship. But I also realized how my helpfulness might look suspicious to someone determined to see it that way. I did know Josiah's schedule well. I did have his spare key. I was comfortable in his apartment because I had been there many times to help him out. Someone looking for evidence of an affair could twist all of these innocent facts. I don't understand where Cooper's suspicions came from or why he waited 4 months to voice them. His behavior in the immediate aftermath of Josiah's death seemed normal. He grieved, he leaned on family and friends for support, he gradually returned to his regular activities. There were no signs that he suspected me of anything more serious than being inconsistent about minor details. The accusation has turned my world upside down. I can't go to work without wondering if Cooper has contacted my boss with his theory. I can't go to the grocery store without worrying that he's told people in our small town that I'm a murderer. I'm afraid to contact our mutual friends because I don't know what Cooper might have said to them. I keep going over every interaction I had with Josiah, trying to figure out if I did something that could be misinterpreted. Josiah and I got along well, but our relationship was completely appropriate. He was my brother-in-law and my husband's best friend. I helped take care of him because Cooper asked me to and because it was the right thing to do for family. The worst part is not understanding Cooper's motivation. If he really believed I had killed Josiah, why did he wait 4 months to say anything? Why didn't he go to the police immediately instead of confronting me at a family dinner? His behavior makes no sense unless he doesn't actually believe his own accusations and is using them for some other purpose. I'm planning to contact a lawyer tomorrow to understand my options. I don't know if Cooper is serious about going to the police or if he's just trying to hurt me for some unknown reason. Either way, I need to protect myself from these accusations and figure out how to move forward. The marriage I thought was built on 20 years of friendship and 5 years of love has apparently been destroyed by Cooper's conviction that I murdered his brother for reasons that make no sense. I don't know if there's any way to repair this or if I even want to try. Update 1: Cooper went to the police. Detective Martinez called me last Tuesday and asked if I would come in to answer some questions about Josiah's death. I said I would be happy to help but wanted to bring a lawyer. The detective said that was my right and we scheduled the meeting for Friday. I hired attorney Jennifer Walsh based on recommendations from 3 different sources. She specializes in criminal defense and has handled cases involving family accusations before. Jennifer reviewed all the materials I had gathered, text messages between Cooper and me about helping Josiah, photos from family events, my phone records from the day Josiah died. The police interview lasted about 2 hours. Detective Martinez asked me to walk through my last visit with Josiah in detail. I explained that Cooper had asked me to bring Josiah leftovers from our dinner because he was worried Josiah wasn't eating enough while working double shifts. I arrived at Josiah's apartment around 6 p.m. and stayed less than 10 minutes. Josiah answered the door in his work clothes, blue pants and a gray shirt with his company logo. He looked tired but was friendly and grateful for the food. We talked briefly about his work schedule and when he might have a weekend off. He mentioned wanting to buy a house once he saved enough for a down payment. I left the leftovers in his refrigerator and said goodbye. Detective Martinez asked if Josiah seemed upset or mentioned any problems he was having. I said he seemed tired from working so much but otherwise normal. He didn't mention any conflicts with Cooper or anyone else. He didn't seem worried about anything specific. The detective asked about my relationship with Josiah and whether we ever spent time alone together. I explained that I occasionally went to Josiah's apartment to bring food or check on things when Cooper couldn't, always at Cooper's request. Josiah and I were friendly but never socialized independently of Cooper. Our interactions were always brief and practical. Detective Martinez asked if I knew of any reason Cooper might think Josiah and I were having an affair. I said I had no idea where that accusation came from. I showed the detective text messages between Cooper and me coordinating help for Josiah. The messages clearly showed that Cooper was the one asking me to visit Josiah and help with errands. Jennifer asked if the police had found any evidence to support Cooper's theory. Detective Martinez said they had reviewed Josiah's phone records and found no unusual communication between Josiah and me. They had examined Josiah's car again and found no signs of tampering. The insurance company's investigation had been thorough and their conclusion remained unchanged. The detective said Cooper had been persistent in requesting a new investigation but had provided no concrete evidence to support his claims. Cooper's accusations were based on his interpretation of normal family interactions and his belief that my behavior after Josiah's death was suspicious. Jennifer asked if I was considered a suspect or if charges were being considered. Detective Martinez said no charges were being filed at this time. The original investigation had been thorough and Cooper's new claims were not supported by evidence. However, the police had to take any murder accusation seriously and investigate accordingly. After the interview, Jennifer explained that Cooper's accusations were legally problematic for him rather than me. Making false statements to police and potentially filing false reports could result in charges against Cooper. She advised me to document any further contact from Cooper or his family and avoid engaging with him directly. I felt relieved after talking to the police, but the situation with Cooper's family became worse. Linda called me the day after my police interview and said she and Robert had decided they needed space from me while they processed everything. She asked me not to contact them or visit their house until further notice. Linda's tone was polite but cold. She said they weren't taking sides but needed to support Cooper during this difficult time. When I asked if they believed Cooper's accusations, Linda said they were confused and hurt by the whole situation. She didn't directly answer whether they thought I had killed Josiah. I asked Linda if she remembered all the times Cooper had asked me to help with Josiah's care. She acknowledged that Cooper had frequently coordinated my visits to Josiah's apartment but said she now wondered if there had been more going on than she realized. She said my familiarity with Josiah's routine and apartment seemed excessive in hindsight. I reminded Linda that she and Robert had thanked me multiple times for helping take care of Josiah when he was working so much. They had praised Cooper and me for being such a good support system for Josiah during his busy period at work. Linda admitted they had appreciated my help but said Cooper's accusations had changed how they viewed those interactions. The conversation with Linda lasted about 30 minutes. By the end, it was clear that even if she didn't completely believe Cooper's theory, she wasn't willing to dismiss it entirely. She said the family needed time to work through their feelings about Josiah's death and Cooper's accusations. Robert called me 2 days later with a different message. He said he had been thinking about Cooper's claims and didn't find them credible. Robert pointed out that Cooper had specifically asked me to help with Josiah countless times and had never expressed any jealousy or concern about my relationship with Josiah. Robert said Cooper's behavior since making the accusation seemed calculated rather than emotional. He mentioned that Cooper had been researching police procedures and legal processes related to reopening investigations. Robert found it strange that Cooper was approaching the situation like a project rather than expressing genuine grief or anger. I asked Robert if he thought Cooper actually believed his own accusations. Robert said he wasn't sure but was troubled by how methodical Cooper's approach seemed. He said someone who truly believed their spouse had murdered their brother would be more emotional and less strategic. Robert promised to support me if Cooper's accusations escalated further. He said he would tell the police that Cooper's claims contradicted years of observable family dynamics. However, he asked me to be patient with Linda, who was struggling more with the situation. 3 days after my conversation with Robert, Cooper showed up at my workplace. My boss called me to the front desk and said my husband was there to see me. I found Cooper in the lobby with a folder of papers and a serious expression. Cooper said he wanted to give me one chance to confess before he took his evidence to a prosecutor. He claimed the folder contained proof of my affair with Josiah and my involvement in his death. When I asked what evidence he had, Cooper said he had analyzed my phone records and found suspicious patterns in my location data. I told Cooper I had already spoken to the police and they found no evidence to support his claims. He said the police hadn't looked hard enough and that he had discovered things they missed. He insisted that my phone showed I had been at Josiah's apartment more frequently than I had admitted. Cooper's demeanor during this confrontation was strange. He seemed excited rather than angry or sad. He talked about his investigation like he was proud of his detective work. He kept checking his watch and looking around the lobby as if he expected something to happen. I asked Cooper why he was really doing this. He said he owed it to Josiah to get justice and couldn't live with a murderer. When I pointed out that we had been married for 2 years since Josiah's death and he had never expressed these concerns before, Cooper said he had been gathering evidence and building his case. The conversation lasted about 20 minutes before building security asked Cooper to leave. He handed me the folder and said I had 48 hours to confess or he would take his evidence to the district attorney's office. As he walked away, he turned back and said he hoped I would do the right thing for once. I opened the folder after Cooper left and found printouts of maps showing locations where my phone had been detected. Cooper had highlighted several instances where my phone was near Josiah's apartment complex. However, all of these instances corresponded to dates when Cooper had specifically asked me to visit Josiah or run errands for him. Cooper had also included a timeline of Josiah's death with speculation about how I could have caused the accident. His theory involved me drugging Josiah's food or tampering with his car during my final visit. The timeline was detailed but based entirely on Cooper's imagination rather than evidence. Jennifer reviewed Cooper's folder and confirmed that nothing in it constituted actual evidence of wrongdoing. She said Cooper's location data analysis actually supported my story by showing that my visits to Josiah's apartment correlated with Cooper's requests for help. She advised me to save the folder as evidence of Cooper's escalating behavior. I'm now dealing with the reality that my husband has become obsessed with proving I murdered his brother. Cooper's accusations have isolated me from his family and created stress at my workplace. I don't understand what triggered this campaign against me or what Cooper hopes to achieve. The marriage is clearly over, regardless of how this situation resolves. Cooper has accused me of the worst possible crime and is actively trying to have me arrested for something I didn't do. There's no way to rebuild trust or intimacy after such devastating betrayal. Update 2: Cooper posted about me on Facebook. He created a detailed post claiming I had murdered Josiah and was about to be arrested. The post included what he said were excerpts from police reports and evidence from his private investigation. He tagged dozens of people from our hometown and shared the post in several local community groups. I discovered the Facebook post when my friend Karen called me at 7 a.m. asking if I was okay. She said people were sharing a post about me being a murderer and wanted to know if it was true. By the time I logged into Facebook, Cooper's post had been shared 43 times and had over 100 comments. Cooper's post was long and detailed. He started by expressing his grief over Josiah's death and his initial trust in the police investigation. He said new evidence had come to light that proved Josiah had been murdered by someone close to the family. He claimed the police were preparing to make an arrest, but he felt obligated to warn the community about a dangerous person living among them. The post included what Cooper said were excerpts from Josiah's phone records showing frequent contact with me. He provided dates and times of phone calls and text messages, claiming they proved we were having an affair. However, when I checked these dates against my own records, they were times when Cooper had asked me to coordinate plans with Josiah or check on him. Cooper also included photos that he said showed suspicious activity. One photo was of my car in Josiah's apartment complex parking lot, taken from Cooper's own phone when he had asked me to bring Josiah groceries. Another photo showed me hugging Josiah at a family barbecue, captioned as evidence of our inappropriate relationship. The most disturbing part of Cooper's post was his claim that police had found evidence I had tampered with Josiah's car. He said investigators discovered traces of a substance that could cause drowsiness in Josiah's system. He provided what